need to.
Yeah.
All right, it's working. All right, so I'm Joel and this is Keeks. We're running through some things for the week. We're going to start doing these as a point to hold ourselves accountable and then also be able to just show you guys that we're constantly improving and always learning new things. We'll start this segment up. So weekly, hopefully I'll post these on YouTube so you'll be able to see them. But this week, we're going to run over principles of training. So our principles of training, and then also how to keep a client accountable and what type of methods you can use to keep them accountable. Do you want me to go ahead? Do you want me to start, or do you want to introduce yourself? Go for it. Say a little bit.
Yeah. My name is Keegan. I live here in Zimbabwe, Harare, and I've been personal trainer for about 4 years now, / medic, and yeah, just enjoying the process and enjoying changing people's lives.
Love that. Love that. And then for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Joel and I run out of Athletic Ability and Joel Wellness on Instagram. But I've been in the exercise science world for a little bit now and moving into the one-on-one coaching and client coaching in terms of health and lifestyle coordinating and stuff like that. And yeah, me and Keegs have known each other for a little bit through a mutual mate of ours, Michael. Shout out to you. And yeah, we've been brought together. We've been doing these mastermind calls for the last, I think it's been about 6 weeks, probably
2 months. Yeah,
about 2 months, and we think that they're valuable things to start sharing with the universe. So we're going to try and jam everything into the 45 minutes that Zoom allows us to, and then when it cuts off, we'll be done. Sweet as. Do you want to take it off, or should I?
Yeah, I think I've got some stuff written down, so I think I'll just go over them and then we can sort of just see if you feel you're also on the same, and we just go through them. So a lot of them was it's knowing your client, the specificity, the frequency, progressive overload, variety, recovery, your ceiling point, and your interference of the training. So those are sort of the principles that I've sort of felt. Did anything spark interest there?
Yeah, I like the ceiling point, and then I also like the first bit about knowing your client on that. I feel like that plays a massive part, knowing them emotionally first and getting a good connection and building that rapport with them.
Yeah. So like for me, I do with all of my home clients, I got to know them personally. I'm going into their homes, so it's very one-on-one, and yeah, getting to understand their stress levels. You know, some of them got kids, some of them don't. So are they getting their sleep at night, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, you're looking at the exercises itself. I mean, it comes down to the basics where you're not going to go to John and give him 30 deadlifts and go to Janny and give her 30 deadlifts. They're very different. They both stimulated different sections of the training. So you can't be giving what you give to the other guy to everyone else. So I think it's also knowing that in your client is their strengths and their weaknesses and what they really thrive on, and also what makes them happy in the training. Because if you just give them a cuck workout, they're just going to leave you eventually because they're not enjoying. And for me, that's also the form of my training, is I get the people to enjoy the training rather than actually focus on growing, even though the goal is to get the goals, but yeah, it's for them to understand it and love it. Yeah.
I think that's actually a good thing to go with getting them to actually love it instead of, because I think from our side of view, we know a lot, right? So we'd come across with points of like saying, oh, this is where we're progressing to, this is where we're going, but not looking at where they are right now. That's definitely something that I take from that, just making them learn and love that process of the beginning stages of training and stuff like that.
Pardon?
Like the beginning stages of training and learning to love that part.
Yeah. Like you don't just, especially on first clients, like what I've learned is you don't come in with the first client with a set program, because you do that and then they go and tell you something, and then for one, you can get flustered because you're now just like, oh flip, I've given you this and now what do I do? You got to have a basic exercises, and then you just give them out to them in whatever way you feel their questionnaire, whatever you did with them in the beginning, whatever is their best strengths and weaknesses. And then from there, you just learn, okay, that's cool. I'm not going to push you too hard on the first session because then you're just going to hate me. And
Yeah,
What's the point of
exactly.
that? Yeah,
You become sore the next day and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
What were the other points coming down from? So that's the training also. Towards the bottom. What were the other ones?
Yeah, specificity. La, la, la.
Specificity.
Yeah.
Specificity.
um, I think that's just basically going towards their goals. I think, especially for me, I have seen it at one point or two where I'm training a client and I've set them up for the week, and then the next week when I'm doing their weekly program or whatever, sometimes I just don't think about it. I'm just like, okay, cool. I'm going to get them to do some cardio. I'm going to get them to do this. But then once in a while, you can forget about their specific goals, and you forget that they really wanted to work on their glutes, and you don't actually add a glute exercise. And from that, they may feel in the week, they're like, oh, I didn't actually do anything
Doing the
to
stuff.
work what I wanted. So that could get them down. So I think it's always going towards what the client wants, but then also giving them an overall experience.
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah, I do relate to that for sure.
Yeah. Don't know if you can hear all my chickens in the backyard.
All the ducks. Yeah, I heard them before.
Next one is your frequency, intensity, type, and time. So in a little fit. So FITT. So basically, you got to keep them accountable in their frequency, the intensity. Some like for the one client I have, for I had 2 weeks of them. They were doing a bit of CrossFit timed workout. So like your EMOMs and your WODs and all that kind of stuff. And then the next 2 weeks after that, I stopped that sort of intensity and just went to the weights, focusing on slow RDLs, things like that, getting that type of training. So I think switching up that intensity is good. Also, as I mentioned, the type of training. For me, I love mixing up the type. It's always going to be different. Not in terms of too different where you are switching in between, so you're not actually progressing, but you always getting in a little bit of difference, especially for someone who can at least train 5 times a week. You can now do a lot more. And that also just helps with your risk injury. If you're doing all different types of training, your risk to reward ratio is so much lower. Your reward is going to be higher. And then obviously your time, how long are you training these guys? Like I've got some clients who are 70 years old and they can only train for 30 minutes max. And then he's puffed. And then there's others who I'll train pretty much to 45 to an hour. Hours a max. For someone who's not an athlete, I don't find that they need to train to an hour roughly. 45 minutes. If they are there
45 minutes
doing the exercise, getting to a point of failure in some of the exercises, then they know they're actually doing it correct. Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. Yeah, and then some of the stuff that I put down as well, like really relates back to that, the principle of the training and looking at the type, the frequency, the intensity, all that sort of stuff, and then knowing that every single client is so different, and that a different approach needs to be taken for each client. So the 3 things that I put
huge
down,
thing.
it's a massive thing, and it's not just like a rinse and repeat. That's why like people can get caught up with creating programs and being like, this is the end all be all program. That's what we talked about last week. And it's like, yeah, okay, sweet. It's a really good 6-week program, but it might not work for everyone else. So that's why it has to be personalized. But yeah, the 3 principles that I train on when doing programming and all that sort of stuff is the mobility, the stability, and the strength. I believe that those 3 are the biggest pinnacles in training. And there's a process to it. It doesn't just start with strength. It starts with control your mobility in your body. Then moving into stability, which is more of an intermediate level, how to create force, how to drive through your feet, base of support, all that sort of stuff. And then moving into strength. But I struggle with that because not everyone wants to start that way. They always want to go straight into stuff.
Into strength. Yeah.
And that's what's kind of brought me to where we are now in terms of the training that I'm doing and the type of client that I have. It takes a very particular client to understand that that's the way it should be done, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. I think, it's hard to get those people, but once you get them to realize that standpoint, and this is what's going to progress you. Because if you just start with strength, you can progress. But if you start with that, your progression will be 10 times more. Yeah. And that, for me, that mobility part is something that is so ignored in a lot of simple training. Not saying that personal trainers don't do it, but just people in the gym, they just go there, lift some weights, especially for those who are just doing weights. Like you're just smashing those weights, and then eventually after a while, something's going to go. Yeah.
And it's training your body in all forms of stimuluses to be able to control like an injury like that and make sure that it doesn't happen. With a lot of the movements can be dynamic though with strength. Like you can do stuff that works your mobility as well as complements strength, right? But really being able to look at just how someone controls their body first, and then the way that they move and walk and run and stuff is probably the basis of everything, really. But yeah, it's cool.
With that, a really nice exercise that I've been doing with that is the Turkish get up.
Okay, yeah, it's a good one.
That one. Yeah. I just love, because then for one, it's getting those stomachs. It's just like, huh, what, live this way? And then
what the hell?
And it just shows how they can actually, because some of them, they'll be going up, but their arm, it just comes down here. They can't hold that shoulder up, and it just shows their strength in their shoulder. And then their hips, can they actually turn that? For me, I quite love that one.
That I would consider, yes, it's a strength movement, but also it's a stability and a mobility movement, like all in one, right? And then you can obviously progress that to like a windmill, just as like a kneeling windmill, single arm windmill, and all that sort of stuff. But anyways, moving on from the actual exercises.
We'll just start talking one exercise the whole call. For me, another principle is progressive overload. Obviously, that's in every single program. Well, it should be. It's simple. You want your client to progress, you're going to have to increase the weight. Even if it's literally 1 kg the next time, you should do it. Because if they stay on that weight for what's the point? Unless they are struggling to get form, then obviously you want to go lighter even, and then you just progress from there.
Just to touch on that progressive overload thing, I think that word can scare people a little bit, and the way moving into more the philosophical side of my principles of training, another thing that I would say to a client is just small steps over a long period of time. That's how I would simplify that. And it's building that framework and those foundations to be able to push that weight a little bit more. It's essentially progressive overload. Like that's all it is. But to not your average Joe, but to a client that's never done any sort of weightlifting or anything like that, just know that small steps over time is going to compound and get you to where you want to be. And it's just that extra step every single day.
Every day.
That's it.
It's all life is.
I've
got 3 more. Obviously, recovery. That's a huge one. I've got a few points on this actually. I'll make them quick. So recovery, obviously, on just your training week. Like if you're training 5 days, then I always like to do a sort of a low intensity day. So you're still doing the movements, but at a low intensity. So you're sort of recovering. And then if you're doing 3 days a week or 4 days, then you've got sort of a day to rest. And then weekends, you can rest. I'm not saying I'm against going 7 days a week. Go for it if you feel that works for you, but they always just need to make sure you are resting or doing some form of different training to rest. And then also recovery and resting in terms of holidays and eating, stuff like that. You need that. Things like Christmas or your Easter weekends or holidays with the friends or something, and you go out and they want to have glasses of wine, beers, or there's chocolates, there's carbs, there's all that kind of stuff. Indulge yourself. Take it in, be a human, and I think that's the best way to do it. And then come back and work. And
then work harder and better. And it's just a day at the end of everything. It's a day. It's a day to enjoy yourself and a day to actually be a human again. And I like that. I like being a human again. That's what makes us human. I had a feeling that most of our principles of training would be very similar. So the ones that I had written down is obviously the mobility, stability, strength. They were the 3 main ones for me. I simplify it into just the 5 things. So I'll talk about the mobility, stability, strength, and I'll explain that there's a process to it. And then also the progressive overload one, which is small steps over a long period of time. That's what I'd tell anybody. It's better than making a massive step one day and then jumping off the bandwagon for 3 days and then getting back on it. It's also another one for me is also how quick you can get back on the horse. So the second you fall off something, how quick can you rebound and jump back into action? So
I like that, yeah.
I'll get someone like, and this came from my coach, Philip, as well. Like it was probably the biggest thing that I took from it when he spoke about. I had a couple of days where it were rough as shit, right? And I felt like shit, and I underate, and I had drinks the night before and all that sort of stuff. And I came to him and I was like, look, I've just messed up these 3 days. And he goes, it doesn't matter. Like you've messed up 3 days, it's done now. But how quick can you pick up the pieces and get back on the horse? So that's one thing. Another one, and then learning to treat yourself with kindness. This touches to exactly what you were saying with your recovery side of things. So treat your body with kindness and to recover properly.
That's huge.
Goals in terms of training are not done. They are kind of done in the gym, but for me, it's done in the bed and in the kitchen. The two things, and then also with recovery. So anything like your saunas, your ice baths, all that sort of stuff. That's where your results are impacted.
Yeah. It's huge. Like especially for a lot of my clients, like I like to get the beginners of clients. I do a few like intermediate and then some athletes, but the beginners, I love it because it's like, if you think about whenever you start a gym, like I started gym at like 16 and like I was a twig, and getting to that point, and then you look at yourself and you're like, flip, I'm not gaining anything, whatever. But it's just over that time, and you're kind to yourself, and you realize what's the point of doing all of that. You're gonna get there. And sorry, I'm actually just losing my train of thought there. I went on something in my head, but there was a thing of, if you had a picture on your bathroom wall and it was a picture of your younger self, are you going to speak to yourself the same way you do and speak to them like you would now? You wouldn't. So speak to yourself like you are that younger person, and you'll realize, oh, I'm actually doing a pretty okay job.
No, you look at just how far you've come, right? And you just look at the progress you made and realize that it was all just small steps, and it was just you progressing in the right direction. Perfect. I reckon that summarizes those principles of training quite well. That's sweet. All right, moving on to accountability. The one thing as coaches I find with being able to hold a client accountable, in an online setting, and then also in a one-on-one face-to-face setting. I just want to start by saying that there's so many different ways that you can go about it. I feel like there's the strict coach, there's the lenient coach, there's all these different types of coaches that you can become, and it's so different person to person. It's also so different to what the client receives, and what they receive well, whether they like that sort of coaching. It's being able to be a chameleon in that sort of sense. But I watched a video recently of Jackson Pios. I think that's how you say his last name. Have you seen his videos?
No, I don't think so.
He spoke about the leniency within coaching and this new world of coaching, and how a person comes to you to be able to achieve a goal and to be able to get somewhere that they want to get to. They seek help from you. Are you being coached by telling them that they're doing fine when they're not doing fine? Or are you too lenient? So I had this discussion with someone else the other day as well, and saying you can go one of two ways. Like there's two ways to go about it. And I strongly feel that you can't go both. It's either you are a set and ground, this is what needs to happen, this is what you need to be doing. When it comes to check-ins, you need to be getting the check-ins in. You need to be looking at completing these nutrition things every week because you've come to me to achieve a goal. This is what you have to do. Or the road that I like to take is more the emotional understanding that everyone's different and their goals are so different and the progress is going to be so different as well. So,
Yeah.
but
That's really hard.
that I struggle with that though, because
Yeah.
that doesn't get clients to hold themselves accountable. If I'm not behind the scenes pushing someone to get it done and being like, this is what
They're
needs,
just gonna coast by.
they just
Yeah.
coast, they just coast along and it's
Yeah.
so
That's actually that's true. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, because as you're saying that, I'm thinking of my one client, and they're very they've got a high stress life. They're doing things in their personal lives that are just, the situation's not as they liked it to be. And I can't just say to them, hey, you're gonna miss your goals if you don't actually just get to work. So
Mm,
I try to the way I do it is, I think I'm more on the emotional side. And basically what I try to do is I try to give homework.
yeah.
And I'm like, because you're probably not reaching this goal. In my mind, I'm saying you're probably not going to reach this goal of where we want because of maybe your intensity of training, and you don't like to be told what to do or shouted at. Obviously you don't shout, but I would say do some homework, go for extra walks. Here's Do the Turkish get up Thursday, Friday. um I think that's an approach that I take. But I yeah, I think it comes down to that knowing who
Mm,
the client is and what they can take, and from there you pick that fork road. You go
exactly.
down the hard or
It
you go
takes
down the
time.
soft.
It takes so much
Mm,
time to build that rapport with an individual, I guess. So
yeah.
yeah, what he also said was towards the end of the video, like I do really, really like his stuff. Like he's such a sick coach. So
What's his name?
Jackson Peos, Peos. He's he's super sick. He runs
Sure.
this great coaching course and something I really, really want to do, and I'm looking to do it in the future as well. So
Sick.
but yeah, anyways, he summarizes the video by saying that oh, lost my train of thought now. So yeah, whether you can be the strict coach or yeah, so if your client isn't progressing and they're not holding themselves accountable and you're not keeping them accountable, maybe it is a conversation that needs to be had. So he said that the
Mm,
conversation that needs to be had, as simple as this, is being like, I don't think your actions are lining up with your goals right now. And I don't think you're going to be able to get there if you continue on this path. How can we change it? He goes, a conversation like that with a client gets them thinking, gets them engaged,
yeah,
and straight
that's a
away they're
good
going to
way to
start
do
to
it.
question the things that they're doing. So that's what I took from it. And I having those conversations is extremely hard, and that's where you have to kind of get rid of that emotional
You gotta
standpoint
tip
and
it over, yeah.
cut it off for a second and be like, look, I'm going to give you some hard stuff right now. Have a listen, and then I appreciate your feedback from there.
Yeah.
It's
I
so
think,
much easier said than done, but
yeah.
it's yeah.
But that giving the ball into their court,
Mhm.
not necessarily saying, going to client be like, hey, listen, you're not reaching your goals. We really need to work harder. Our intensity needs to go up. They're just gonna sit there and be like, flip, I'm failing, or I'm just coasting along, and now you're just gonna kill me even more in the gym. That simple question that Jackson put it of how can we change, put it in their ball court. I think that, yeah,
And
it's
get
gonna
them to
change
put
the
it
whole
through.
ball game.
Then again, he coaches quite high performing individuals, so it's very
Hmm.
different
It's a
to
little bit
like a
easier. Yeah,
foundational
that's
person.
true.
And he's very technical with his coaching. He's an amazing coach. Like some of the stuff that he produces is so cool. Um, but yeah, definitely have a
That's
look
sick.
at the good stuff.
So I think a nice also way to for beginners and stuff is be keeping them accountable, right? A nice way to put it for me is think about it when you were a kid or at school, or even if you played sports outside of school. When you go to do your training, you called it practice, right?
Mm,
And now when we go to gym, we call it gym. Oh, I'm going to the gym. I have to go do my workout. I have to
This
go lift weights.
this is cool.
Why do we stop calling it practice? Because that's all it is. You're going to practice your
Mm,
movements. And when you look at it as practice, you look at it as getting better the whole time. Whereas if you look at it as gym and working out and sweating, you're looking at something that's hard. Like if you, like for me, when I used to do rugby training, I'm like, right, I'm going to practice. I'm going to go work on my ball skills, all that kind of stuff. Now, some days I'm like, flip, I'm going to have to go do 100 deadlifts for CrossFit or something. I'm like, oh, I know my back's going to be sore. I know this. But if you just think, practice, I'm going there, I'm going to work on my strength. I'm going to work on what I can get. I think doing that to beginner clients and getting their mind shift to change to say, oh, I'm here to practice. I think that can change.
That's cool. I really like that. And I think that it's just flipping the script from training has to be done to training is going to get you somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
That's cool. I do really like that.
Yeah. I think also, sorry, I wrote down one point for your off the horse and on the horse. Yeah. I think we basically covered it, but that from doing something and then you're like, oh, getting back on 3 days later, then as a coach, I think we got to look at are they getting back on, are they not getting back on from the physical side, or they're not getting back on from the mental side?
Right. Two different things.
Yeah. So I think it's also good to, if you see ever a client declining, it's also good to check on with them. Is your body being challenged right now, or is it your mental side? Mm-hmm. Because if it's one of the two, we can work on a different strategy to get you back in the gym or back to practice.
Perfect. Yeah, it's understanding the client that all ties into that.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and then it draws a line between becoming a psychologist and becoming an exercise. Right? But you do have a very big part to play in their mental side as well.
Oh,
and you're that person that they can always talk to and feel free to talk to. But it's good stuff.
I think as a personal trainer, I think people don't realize, as us, whatever stuff we got going in our lives, we actually just got to put that to the side, because we're speaking to other people. We can't give that energy off and put their energy down. We got to always be lifting them up. And sometimes when you're down, you're going to actually take that client's good energy and then you're actually going to be up. So motivating someone else, and that's why we do it. In the end goal, that's why we're doing it, is just to motivate people, get them where they want.
To summarize for accountability, it would be, I reckon, just to put it clear, so understanding your client on an emotional level, learning when to be the direct type of coach and the more, I don't know how to say
emotional.
Emotional support coach.
Yeah,
I guess. And then
we'll get one day where we could pick up those words.
Yeah, and then being able to reel them back in when they are falling off the wagon, and getting them back on. I think that's a cool little.
I like those.
Sweet, lovely. I reckon we've run over quite a bit today.
I think so.
Lovely. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll tune in for next week.
Hey, cheers, guys.
See you next week. All right. Let's figure out how to stop.